$25. That's the price of a couple dinners, maybe some coffee and snacks. It's easy to think, what's 25 bucks really gonna do for me? So we spend it without much thought, and before we know it, it's gone. Most of us don't think twice about $25 slipping through our fingers. But what if that same $25 invested every single week could eventually make you more money than a full-time job? In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how. We'll look at how inflation is quietly eating away at your paycheck right now. Then we'll see how a simple force called compounding can flip that script completely. I'll walk you through a 5-fund Fidelity portfolio built specifically for this strategy. And by the end, I'll show you how that same portfolio could turn $25 a week into over $600,000, paying out roughly $4,800 a month in dividend income. But first, let's understand why most people never start. A lot of people hesitate to invest because $25 doesn't seem like enough. And honestly, in the short term, it won't change your life overnight. But that hesitation usually isn't about the money, it's about pressure. You can see this pressure clearly when you look at what's happening with prices. As of early 2026, headline inflation sits around 2.4%. That sounds manageable, but here's the thing. The categories that matter most are rising faster. Housing is up 3%, medical care is up nearly 4%, food when you eat out is up over 4%. These aren't luxuries, these are things you can't avoid. Meanwhile, your paycheck is growing about 3.5% to 4% a year. Sounds okay, right? But here's the catch. The Census Bureau says the median household income in 2024 was about $83,700. Adjusted for inflation, that's roughly the same as 2019. 5 years of work, zero real progress. So your paycheck looks bigger on paper, but it buys the same stuff, or less. That's not getting ahead. That's running in place. And this is where it gets interesting, because there's a force that does the exact opposite of what inflation does to your wallet. Part 1. The snowball nobody sees. Let's start small on purpose. Imagine you invest just $10 a week. In 1 year, that adds up to $520. Not life-changing, not exciting, but watch what happens. In year 1, you invest $520. With a 10% return, you earn 52 bucks. Your balance is now $572. Year 2, you add another $520. Now your balance from last year, $572, combines with the new money. That's $1,092 working for you. 10% on that adds 109 bucks. End of year 2, you're at $1,201. Year 3, another $520 goes in. Your total balance is now $1,721. 10% adds $172. End of year 3, you're at $1,893. See what's happening? Each year, the money you earned starts earning its own money. The growth speeds up even though you're putting in the same amount. Now here's where it gets real. The S&P 500 has returned roughly 10% a year on average for the last 100 years, through wars, through crashes, through recessions and pandemics. The trend has always been upward. At that rate, $25 a week for 30 years turns about $39,000 of your own money into roughly $250,000. Over $210,000 was created entirely by compounding. You didn't earn that at a job. Your money earned it for you. Now, most people think investing is about being smart, picking the right stock, timing the market perfectly. But the data says something very different. Every year, a company called Dalbar studies how real investors actually perform. In 2024, the S&P 500 returned about 25%. The average investor, only 16.5%. That's an 8.5-point gap. Not because they picked bad stocks, because they panicked. They sold at the wrong time. They bought back in too late. And Dalbar found that investors only guessed the market's direction correctly 25% of the time. The people who did nothing, who just stayed invested, they got the full return. That's the edge. Not knowledge, not skill, consistency. Here's the thing. The power of this strategy doesn't come from one amazing fund. It comes from how 5 solid funds work together. Each one has a job, and together they cover everything you need for long-term growth. Let's walk through each one. You'd put $5 a week into each fund. That's $25 total. Fund 1, FZROX, the Foundation. First up is the Fidelity Zero Total Market Index Fund, ticker FZROX. This fund gives you a little piece of the entire U.S. market. Large companies, mid-sized companies, small companies, every major industry, all in one place. It has a dividend yield of about 1%, a 5-year annualized return around 13%, and here's the best part. The expense ratio is 0, not low, 0. Every single penny you invest goes to work. On small weekly amounts, that matters more than most people realize. Think of this fund as the engine room. It does the heavy lifting. Fund 2 is FITLX, the Forward Thinker. Next is the Fidelity U.S. Sustainability Index Fund, ticker FITLX. This fund focuses on companies with strong environmental, social, and governance standards. But don't let the name fool you. This isn't a feel-good fund. It's loaded with some of the most profitable, forward-thinking companies in America. Nearly 37% of the fund is in technology. It yields about 1.1%, has a 5-year return around 16.5%, and the expense ratio is just 0.11%, practically nothing. Think of this fund as your portfolio toward companies that aren't just profitable today, they're built for what's next. Fund 3 is FGRIX, the Steady Hand. Third is the Fidelity Growth and Income Portfolio, ticker FGRIX. This is an actively managed fund that balances growth with steady cash flow. It invests in high-quality companies that generate consistent earnings and grow over time. It yields about 1.3% and has delivered roughly 16.5% annualized over 5 years. The expense ratio is 0.53%, which is higher than the index funds, but the performance is justified. This fund doesn't just grow your money, it starts putting money back in your pocket. Fund 4 is FDGFX, the Dividend Grower. This one is special. It doesn't chase the highest dividend today. Instead, it focuses on companies with a long history of raising their dividends year after year. It yields about 1%, but its 5-year annualized return is 17%. It carries a 5-star rating from Morningstar. The expense ratio is 0.88%, the highest in the group, but the track record speaks for itself. Think of this fund as your dividend accelerator. The dividends start small, but they keep getting bigger. Fund 5 is FSKGXX, the Global Safety Net. Finally, we have the Fidelity Global ex-US Index Fund, ticker FSKGXX. This fund invests in companies outside the United States, Europe, Asia, emerging markets. It gives your portfolio international diversification, so you're not betting everything on one country. It has the highest yield in the portfolio at 2.7%. In 2025, it returned an incredible 33% as international markets rallied. Its 5-year average is around 8%, and the expense ratio is just 0.055%, almost free. This is your insurance policy. When the U.S. market struggles, international markets can pick up the slack. So let's put it all together. 5 funds, $5 each, $25 a week. A blended portfolio has an average yield of about 1.4% with strong dividend growth across the board and average annual appreciation in the range of 10 to 13%. The weighted expense ratio is near 0 thanks to FZROX and FSKGXX.
Diversification, growth, income, international exposure, and rock-bottom fees. This portfolio is designed to do one thing: survive anything the market throws at it and keep growing. All right, let's see what happens when you invest $25 a week into this portfolio. $5 into each fund. Every single week, no skipping, no overthinking, just consistency. Year 1. By the end of year 1, you've invested $1,300. Your portfolio is worth roughly $1,400. Not exciting yet, and that's okay. You're planting seeds. Nobody looks at a seed and says, "That's not a tree yet, so why bother?" Year 10. Fast forward to year 10, your portfolio has grown to about $23,000. Your annual dividend income is around $500. That's about $40 a month in passive income. Not a fortune, but it's money you didn't have to work for. Your money made it while you slept. Year 20. Year 20 is where things start to feel different. Your portfolio has crossed six figures, about $113,000, and your dividend income has grown to nearly $5,000 a year. That's roughly $400 a month, coming in whether you work or not. Some people earn that from a part-time job. You're earning it from an investment that started with $25 a week. Year 30, the tipping point. And then year 30. This is where the math becomes almost hard to believe. Your portfolio has grown to roughly $641,000. Your annual dividend income has expanded to about $58,000 a year. That's approximately $4,800 a month. Let that sink in. $4,800 a month in dividend income alone. The median American working full-time earns about that. You're matching a full-time paycheck from an investment that cost you $25 a week. 62% of Americans say inflation changed how they spend. But here's the real question. Did it change how they invest? 1 in 5 Americans over 50 has zero retirement savings. That's according to AARP. And over half of people over 50 worry they won't have enough to last through retirement. But you're watching this video, which means you're already thinking differently. The difference between people who build wealth and people who don't isn't income. It's not luck, it's consistency. Here's the contrast that makes this real. Your total contributions over 30 years, $39,000. Your portfolio, over $641,000. That means for every single dollar you put in, compounding created roughly $15 more. You provided the seed. Time and consistency did the rest.
Most people don't quit investing because the math doesn't work. They quit because the early results feel discouraging. You put in your $25, you check your balance a week later. It barely moved. Maybe it even went down. Your brain screams, "This isn't working." A scary headline pops up, a friend says the market is about to crash, and suddenly stopping feels safer than continuing. But here's what's actually happening. We're wired to think in straight lines. More effort should equal more reward. More hours should mean a bigger paycheck. But investing doesn't work that way. In the beginning, you can see the effort, but you can't see the results. The payoff is delayed, and our brains hate that. We're taught that smart investing means watching the market closely and making quick decisions. The data says the exact opposite. Remember that Dalbar study? Investors correctly guessed the market's direction only 25% of the time. They would have been better off flipping a coin. The people who just automated their investments and stopped checking, they collected the full market return. And here's another number that drives this home. Research from Hartford funds shows that since 1930, companies that consistently grow their dividends have returned roughly 9.2% a year. Companies that don't pay dividends at all, only about 4.3%. You don't need to be clever, you need to be patient. So here's the shift that changes everything. Stop measuring success by your portfolio balance. Start measuring it by one simple question. Did I invest this week? If the answer is yes, you won. That's it. The market went up, you invested. The market went down, you invested, and your $25 bought more shares at a lower price. Either way, you made progress. Let compounding handle the rest. So let's bring it all together. 5 Fidelity index funds, $5 into each one, every week. No stock picking, no market timing, no guesswork. FZROX covers the total U.S. market at zero cost.
FITLX tilts toward future-focused companies. FGRIX adds steady growth and income. FDGIX accelerates your dividends over time. And FSGGX protects you with international exposure. After 30 years, projections show a portfolio worth over $641,000, paying roughly $4,800 a month in dividends. That's more than what many Americans bring home from a full-time job. Before you go, drop a comment and tell me, are you already investing weekly, or is this the video